The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The Flint, Michigan water disaster is truly a crisis at this point. If you haven't been following the story, the contamination of Flint, Michigan water started in April of 2014 when the city changed the source of its drinking water from Lake Huron to the Flint River, okay? And this led to massive lead contamination, huge public health crisis, 6,000 to 12,000 residents with severely high levels of lead in their blood experiencing all sorts of health problems. In addition to this, there is every reason to believe that changing the water source from Lake Huron to the Flint River caused an outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, which has killed 10 people so far and affected about 77 people. There's been a class action filed by 4 families in November against Governor Rick Snyder and 13 other officials. January 5th, a state of emergency was declared by Governor Rick Snyder, and then President Obama eventually declaring it a federal state of emergency. When you look at the water, Lewis, this is just sickening.
Yeah, it just looks like, well, it kind of looks like urine or something. I don't know. It does not have a good color, and this whole thing just reeks of incompetence everywhere from the city administrators to the EPA.
4 officials have resigned so far over the mishandling of the situation. What is the latest on this? There's been so much in the news, particularly over the big snowstorm weekend, and it makes sense to really get up to speed on it. First of all, the idea of switching to the Flint River as a source of water was rejected in 2012 by an emergency manager who was appointed by Rick Snyder. The emergency manager for Flint, Michigan, appointed by Governor Rick Snyder in 2012, said, no, we're not going to use the river here as our drinking water source after consulting with the state's Environmental Protection Agency. Now, how could the river, where they said, no, we are not going to use this as our source of drinking water, how could that same river that was rejected in December of 2012 suddenly be suitable for consumption just 16 months later? And we don't have an answer to that, right? The question A is, why was it rejected as a source back in 2012? We haven't gotten a straight answer to that, Lewis. And then if it was rejected for some logical reason, then how are we all of a sudden saying it's okay to drink from it now?
Well, it was rejected after a consultation with state environmental regulators or whatever. Right. So it wouldn't be a financial reason. It would be that they deemed it unsafe.
Every indication is that that's the logical thing. There was some reason why the residents should not be drinking out of that. Now, who actually made the disastrous choice to start using the previously rejected river water to source the city's public water? Well, it was Howard Croft, the former director of public works for Flint, who resigned just a couple of months ago. He said that more than 4 months ago in a videotaped interview with the ACLU of Michigan that the decision to use this dangerously corrosive river as a source came directly from the Snyder administration. Croft said that the decision to use the river was, to use the term Lewis just used, a financial one with a review that went all the way up through the state. Every indication, Lewis, it was not used as the water source back in 2012 because the water was not safe, and that it ultimately was used for financial reasons, and it is just an absolute disaster.
And we talk about decisions just like this all the time. The decision to put people's health at risk to save some money. And, you'd have to ask the governor if the decision was, if he wants to save money because that savings is going to help the people of...
oh, yeah, I'm sure it was going to go to improving education.
Well, yeah, I mean, who knows what he was going to do with that extra money. But it's clear that he is probably the one that we can all point the finger at here.
We can also question, however, the EPA. They have shifted the blame elsewhere to Michigan state officials. The EPA saying under the Safe Drinking Water Act, the state of Michigan was responsible for implementing the regulations to protect their residents' drinking water. EPA's ability to oversee management of that situation was impacted by failures and resistance at the state and local levels to work with us in a forthright, transparent, and proactive manner consistent with the seriousness of the risk to public health. The problem, though, is that the EPA has admitted that its initial response was too slow. Once we finally saw Flint become a state of emergency at the state level, once we saw President Obama declare it a state of emergency at the federal level, only then did the EPA really activate, and a number of people had been petitioning the EPA to act months before this became national headlines, and they didn't. So is this a reason to get rid of the EPA, like some right-wingers and libertarians would say? No, this is a reason to further empower the EPA, but the EPA may share some of the blame, at least in acting too slowly here.
Yeah, that could be. This isn't something where you just flick a switch and the water is transferred, right? So I'm sure that some people in the EPA knew that this transition was happening.
Right.
I guess they didn't speak up loudly enough, if at all.
No, and of course the libertarians are saying, see, this is why we shouldn't have the EPA at all. Well, having the EPA there not doing anything is similar to what would happen if they don't do anything at all, and having them not do anything, or at least anything soon enough, was bad. So the idea that suggests we should get rid of the EPA is one of the dumbest ideas I've heard. Let's talk about this huge blizzard over the weekend in parts of the Northeast, Washington, D.C., New York City. Record snowfall. We were mostly spared here in Boston, maybe, I don't know. What do you think, Lewis? 4 inches or something like that?
I was thinking 3. It really was not much.
Well, right-wingers love to point to these events, like when there's snow in the winter, to suggest that these disprove or somehow conflict with climate change and global warming hypotheses, and this is not true. Michael Mann, who we've had on the show, he was on recently, actually. He's the director of Penn State's Earth Systems Science Center. He indicated that peer-reviewed science predicts that climate change will lead to more intense blizzard-producing nor'easters for the exact reason that this storm over the weekend was so big, which is that the Atlantic Ocean surface temperatures are higher. And when you have higher ocean surface temperatures, it serves almost, to use a very crude analogy, as more fuel for really big and erratic weather events. The bottom line is, critics like to say that massive winter storms are evidence against so-called global warming, but any serious climate change hypothesis, Lewis, would account for continual new records of both cold and hot and an increased number of these record-breaking weather events.
Yeah, I think it will be more erratic. I think we're going to see more of this. You know, I'm not a scientist, but I believe the scientists, and that's the whole point. That's the whole point. So, you know, unfortunately, we have two people that are deniers. We have the people that are maybe aware that this is happening, but protecting big business.
Sure.
And then you have the people that have actually been convinced that this is some liberal hoax.
Right.
I suppose both are equally dangerous.
Kevin Trenberth is the former head of the climate analysis section at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, and he explained that basically what we see here is these superstorms sweep in more water vapor as a result of what he believes to be human-caused climate change and warming of the ocean temperature, and that serves, as I mentioned, as fuel for these really big storms. And we've seen, even before this latest superstorm, a sort of long-term pattern of more extreme precipitation, more in the Northeast, particularly during the winter. And climate scientists have long predicted that this was going to be exactly what we saw. I don't know at this point, Lewis, what it is that can be said to the deniers. This is all backed by science. When it is cold enough to snow, snowstorms will be fueled by more water vapor and thus become more intense. And still, you get Fox News saying, despite it being bitterly cold in the northern plains in December, Congress keeps talking about global warming. They're not going to believe it no matter what the science says, are they?
No, because unfortunately, Fox News also has on scientists, ones that are paid to, conduct studies that show the opposite of what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So it's tricky.
And the Dunning-Kruger effect is a big factor here. The Dunning-Kruger effect is this phenomena where someone doesn't have the cognitive capacity to realize why their reasoning or understanding of something is wrong. They say, oh, global warming, but it's cold and snowy. That's not warming. Well, they don't get why it follows logically based on our understanding of climate change's impact on our planet, why climate change hypotheses would actually predict and suggest exactly the extreme weather events that we've been seeing. Dunning-Kruger effect is tough to overcome. We have a very, very interesting new anti-Donald Trump ad coming out from Our Principles PAC. I will play it for you, and then we'll talk about what Our Principles PAC is. And the whole point of this ad, this is a right-wing ad, mind you, is to show that Donald Trump is basically a lifelong Democrat supporting typical Democratic positions. Let's take a look at the video. Let's listen. It is fascinating.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say.
Universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
Well, who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it. The government's going to pay for it. This tax would raise approximately $5.7 trillion. In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat.
Right.
I hate the concept of guns. I'm not in favor of it.
Why are you joining the Reform Party?
I really believe the Republicans are just too crazy right. I mean, hey, I lived in New York City and Manhattan all my life, okay? So, my views are a little bit different than if I lived in Iowa, perhaps.
Right.
Partial birth abortion. Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I'm very pro-choice.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Or ban partial birth abortion?
No, I am pro-choice in every respect. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say.
Who do you think would be the best qualified to make a deal with Iran?
Hillary's always surrounded herself with very good people. I think Hillary would do a good job.
Make a deal with Iran.
Well, I think Hillary would do a good job.
Nancy Pelosi, the speaker?
And I'm very impressed by her. I think she's a very impressive person. I like her a lot. She was going to really look to impeach Bush and get him out of office,
right.
Which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing.
Right.
So I thought he did a great job tonight. I thought he was strong and smart, and it looks like we have somebody that knows what he's doing. And it's a strong guy who really knows what he wants, and this is what we need.
Hillary's a great friend of mine. Her husband is a great friend of mine. I think Hillary is going to take it, and I think Hillary is very, very capable. I'm very pro-choice, a liberal in health care.
Universal health coverage.
I
for the
like
nation.
universal. As far as single payer, it works in Canada. It works incredibly well in Scotland. It just seems that the economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans.
Donald Trump and I both agree that there ought to be more taxation.
What do you think of eminent domain?
I think it's a wonderful thing. I'll be honest with you.
For people that have been here for years, that have, been hard workers, have good jobs, are supporting a family, it's very, very tough to just say, you have to leave, get out. How do you throw somebody out that's lived in this country for 20 years? We just can't throw everybody out.
He was basically
Absolutely
a Democrat.
fantastic. All right. Government health care that the government will pay for. Tax increase to raise almost $6 trillion. I'm more of a Democrat. I hate the concept of guns. Republicans are too crazy. I would not ban partial birth abortion. I'm very pro-choice. Hillary is the best qualified to make a deal with Iran. I'm very impressed with Nancy Pelosi. It would have been wonderful to impeach George Bush. Obama did great with the stimulus. Hillary and Bill are friends of mine. She's very, very capable. I am more than pro-choice. Single payer works in Canada, and the economy does better under Democrats. This is the Republican leader, Lewis, the leading Republican candidate.
And some of these things he has said very recently. Yes, some of the things in this I wouldn't call a flip-flop because, he admits that he likes, even on the Republican stage recently, he admitted that he liked universal health care.
Right.
But yes, this, it seems like it could be pretty brutal for his, campaign.
And there's no doubt. I mean, Trump's positions are either concocted to appeal to extremist Republicans, ban Muslims, deport everybody, build a wall and force Mexico to pay for it, all this stuff. Or it's just really a show, right? I mean, and I'm increasingly thinking that this is just a show. There's no way that Donald Trump believes the stuff that he's saying. That doesn't mean he's any less dangerous than what he would be by coalescing these extremist xenophobes and nativists. There's no doubt about that. This was put out by a super PAC formed by Katie Packer, who is Mitt Romney's former deputy campaign manager. And of course, this is all about concern from within the Republican Party about Donald Trump. This is a very, I like a lot of the positions that Trump espouses in this video, but from a political point of view, this could be pretty damaging to Trump.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've kind of both been saying for a while that we don't really believe that he believes all the things he's saying.
Right.
And on many issues, as you just saw from this attack ad, he's actually kind of level-headed.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And the more money that Republicans spent against each other, the better it's going to be for the eventual Democratic nominee. If I'm wrong, tell me on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at dpacman. Lewis is on Twitter at Louis Motami.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is James Hull. James, thank you so much for being a David Pakman Show member. You can sign up at davidpakman.com/membership, and I will make the announcement for the first time. Next Tuesday, February 2nd, is indeed my 32nd birthday, and we will be having, Lewis, a February 2nd, 32nd birthday discount for people who are looking to subscribe at a discounted rate. The only thing you need to do in order to be notified of that discounted rate is to make sure you are on our mailing list, which you can sign up for at davidpakman.com. You'll see the sign up space, the sign up box on the left side of the page. James Hall, today's new member of the day. You can sign up instantly at davidpakman.com/membership. Next Tuesday, the big 32nd birthday special. I know Lewis is looking forward to accumulating a few 100,000 memberships on that particular day. Very, very exciting day for Lewis. Remember, if you ever shop on Amazon.com, you can go to davidpakman.com/Amazon if you are in the United States, and you will be redirected to Amazon, and everything that you buy will send the David Pakman Show a little kickback. You can also now, we just set this up last week, if you are in Canada or the UK, if you go to davidpakman.com, you'll see on the right side of the page Amazon links for Canada and for the United Kingdom. So now if you are in either of those locations, the shopping you do on Amazon can support the work that we do. A couple interesting items purchased over the last week by our viewers through these Amazon links. The film Full Metal Jacket. Lewis, what can we say? I mean, just fantastic, fantastic film.
Yeah, it's a classic. Great film and great performance by, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but he's on the TV right behind us. Yeah.
Yes. And when was the last time you saw this movie, out of curiosity?
I don't know. Maybe 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, same here. And just an absolutely excellent, excellent film. A lot of people that don't know about the film, they think it's just sort of like some more warmongering movie cheering about violence or glorifying violence or whatever. And that could not be further from the truth. I mean, this is a really interesting and nuanced analysis.
Yeah, I would say it's quite different from most war movies. Now, this was is this the Kubrick one? Is this the Kubrick film or no?
Is it a Kubrick film? I believe it is.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much says it all, right?
It says everything Lewis needs to know. That's absolutely for sure. Also, remote area medical. I recommended this actually about a year ago. This is about a remote medical clinic that goes into a very remote area very poor area in Bristol, Tennessee, and shows what it's like for an entire community to broadly have lack of access to healthcare. It is on Netflix, and I'm thrilled that people are also streaming it on Amazon, because it really summarizes a lot of the problems that we have in this country with regard to healthcare. So remember, davidpakman.com/Amazon if you ever shop on Amazon.com. Okay, we have video here. This is crazed, delusional video, and it's delusional only in the sense that I feel like it should be something fake, but it is all too real. Donald Trump gave a speech where he was bragging that he could just shoot innocent people on Fifth Avenue in New York City, and he wouldn't lose any supporters whatsoever. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Right. Let's listen to that just one more time so we have a very, very clear understanding of what it is Donald Trump is suggesting here.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
So he's trying to talk about how much his supporters like him, but what he's really saying, Lewis, is that his supporters are so morally bankrupt that they wouldn't care if their candidate started haphazardly firing bullets at innocent people out in public. They would still vote for the guy. And I would even take it a step further, because this is probably true. Depending on who Trump shot, he could probably gain support by shooting innocent people.
Yeah, as long as whoever he was shooting wasn't white, right?
I was saying, imagine if there's a Muslim man walking around New York City with his transgender Jewish girlfriend, and Trump shows up and creates a confrontation in which he eventually stands his ground. He could be a shoo-in as the Republican nominee overnight.
Yeah, it's sad, but I think there's some truth to what he's saying here.
Oh, I think there's no question. Yeah. It's absolutely true. Maybe this is why mass shootings don't motivate these people on the right to change gun safety laws, because they don't see mass shootings as that bad. I mean, as Donald Trump says, he could just start shooting people haphazardly on Fifth Avenue, and it wouldn't hurt him politically. Now, in his defense, Cheney did shoot an innocent guy in the face, and nothing really happened. And even better, the guy that got shot apologized to Dick Cheney. I mean, you can't write this stuff, Lewis. The guy that Cheney shot put out a statement apologizing for all the trouble that this led to for Dick Cheney and his family. It doesn't get more insane than that.
Yes, but that was a hunting accident, right?
Right,
So,
of course.
Well, we don't really know what happened there. I mean, some people speculated that was like a murder attempt, but it was a very strange hunting accident.
It was a very unusual hunting. That hunting accident did not convince Lewis. Let's put it that way. So yeah, as crazy as what Trump said is, I don't think that he's completely wrong. And there's probably, I mean, we know Donald Trump can have women pose provocatively on his private plane. Doesn't seem to impact the support from the so-called moral majority. Donald Trump can, as we said earlier in today's program, say he is not in favor of banning partial birth abortion. He's in favor of giving amnesty to undocumented immigrants. He's in favor of raising taxes. He thinks Hillary Clinton would be a top candidate in terms of qualifications to negotiate a deal with Iran. If he can do all those things and Republican extremists will still support him, it's not going to be any different if he shoots a few people on Fifth Avenue. I think we can say that with certitude.
I guess just good old-fashioned xenophobic rhetoric is the most powerful tool of all.
Let's talk about two new polls from the state of Iowa. The big story in the first two primary states on the Democratic side, of course, have circled around Iowa and New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders appears to be pretty well ahead in New Hampshire and sort of tied in Iowa. And we have an interesting new poll by CNN ORC, which puts Bernie Sanders very far ahead of Hillary Clinton in Iowa, 51-43, with Martin O'Malley at 4%. The big question, Lewis, is the poll accurate? Can we trust the methodology? The good news is that this poll does include cell phones in addition to landlines. Oftentimes, when we see Bernie not do well in polls, cell phones are very much underrepresented, which underrepresents certain age brackets, which are favorable to Bernie Sanders. The bad news in terms of accuracy is that the sample size is only 280 voters, which is a smaller sample size than we like to see. But because of the likely voter algorithm that this poll uses, they tout a 2% margin of error, which is pretty good. Now, we have another new poll in Iowa from CBS. In that one, Bernie Sanders is ahead, but only by 1 within the margin of error, 47-46%. And then, of course, when we look at the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls in Iowa, Hillary Clinton is still ahead, but not by that much, only by about 5 points now, just slightly outside of the margin of error for some of the polls included in that. She is 9 points ahead in a recent KBUR poll, but that poll's margin of error is twice that of the CNN ORC poll. We're a week away, Lewis. I mean, in a week plus 10 hours, we are going to know what the results are in Iowa. And at this point, it seems as though Iowa could be huge in terms of, number one, the impact on momentum that it could have, and number two, the impact that many people will have on the perception of this race. The reality is, with proportional delegate allocation, a 52-48 win for Hillary Clinton in Iowa is not very different than a 52-48 win for Bernie Sanders in Iowa, right? Statistically speaking, it's not going to be a game changer, more than likely, in this race. In terms of the optics, though, it could be a huge game changer.
Yeah, Bernie needs to win. So it could be a game changer. I think Bernie will win both.
Really?
But, one of the little side bonuses to, after the primary is not necessarily seeing who wins so much as finding out which of the pollsters are full of you-know-what.
Oh, we always love to see that. No question about it. And in Iowa, some of the political experts I've been talking to say that the ground game is super important in Iowa because you have a caucus situation. You don't just show up and cast a ballot, right? You show up, you sit at tables, you hang out. The weather can be bad in Iowa on February 1st. It could be tough to say, it could be easy rather to say, I think I'm just going to stay home. I'll vote in the eventual election that we have here. So the ground game is huge in getting people that support your candidate to the caucuses. And every report that I've read and everybody I've spoken to, Lewis, says Bernie Sanders has a really good ground game in Iowa. We will see if it pays off in just a week.
Yes, I'm rooting for Bernie, Dave, all the way. You got to be confident.
Talk to us about this on Reddit. We have a Reddit discussion forum. Go to davidpakman.com/Reddit. That's REDDIT. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll talk to somebody who sounds really, really, really convinced that Bernie Sanders will be our next president.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I'm joined today by A Goodman, who is an author, columnist, journalist, and contributor to the Huffington Post, The Hill, Salon, and numerous other publications. Based on my understanding of your recent articles, you seem very sure that Bernie Sanders is not only going to be the Democratic presidential candidate, but he is also going to be the next president of the United States. It seems to say it's an optimistic reading may be a bit of an understatement. I mean, tell us why you're so sure Bernie is going to be the next president.
Well, when you look at what he's done, David, from last year to today. Okay, so let's recap what Bernie Sanders has been able to do without media coverage.
All right.
Okay. Without a super PAC, without the help of the Democratic National Committee. He went from, if you look at polls, okay, and if you think polls are gospel, he went from 0.8% in late 2014, less than 1%, to now over 40%, 41% in one poll. Because there's a recent poll that said he's 7 points nationally from Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Okay, that was just the other day. So he did all that in addition to breaking Barack Obama's record for contributions. So he has 2.3 million contributions. So he went from virtually unknown in the polls to now 7 points behind Hillary Clinton. He has campaign contributions, 2.3 million. He's at twice the pace now of Barack Obama in terms of campaign contributions. Hillary Clinton's lead is slipping faster in 2016 than it did in 2008. And he's doing all of this with a lot of media pundits, maybe not you, maybe not me, maybe not others, but a lot of media pundits saying he can't do it.
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, as far as he can't do it, we're fans of Bernie's on this program. I believe that there is clearly a path to victory for Bernie Sanders, but it is by no means a foregone conclusion. Everything you've said is true, although you know the average of recent polls still puts Bernie Sanders behind Hillary Clinton nationally by about 15 points. But I think right now, the most important sort of analysis to do is how are things looking in the first four primary states, right? And if we look at Iowa, Bernie Sanders is maybe tied within the margin of error, maybe slightly behind. A new poll has him well ahead in New Hampshire, sort of in an average of New Hampshire polls, he's ahead. And then when you look at Nevada and South Carolina, he's behind and very far behind. So there's certainly a path here. But when I read your article saying, hey, Bernie is going to be the next president, I'm not seeing anything that gives me that level of confidence. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Okay, so this is why maybe I'm the only one, but this is why I think he'll have a commanding. I would not be surprised if he has a dominant landslide victory, and here's why.
Yeah.
The primary reason that Hillary Clinton is up at all, the primary reason is not her record. It's not her record on racial issues. It's not her record in foreign policy. Okay, because one leading historian in the sorry, one leading historian. Yeah, sorry about it. One leading historian in the New York Times says she'll have a neocon foreign policy. So it's not all these things that are record. You can't really, cite her experience because she cites the experience, or Clinton supporters do, but the experience doesn't correlate to why somebody would say, oh, this is good judgment.
Well, you're sort of mixing. I think there's two important issues that you're mentioning there.
I'll get to exactly my point. My point is this: I believe wholeheartedly that Bernie will win Iowa and New Hampshire. Once he wins Iowa and New Hampshire, the floodgates, there'll be a tsunami of media attention. Once that media attention takes place that he didn't receive, so he didn't receive hardly any media attention in terms of him being able to win, him being able to break the paradigm of Clinton's inevitability. Once he gets that media attention from Iowa and New Hampshire wins, her aura of inevitability, Clinton's aura of inevitability will be shattered. Once that goes, and then people start saying, wait a second now, let's look at Clinton's record from a critical thinking vantage point. Now pundits are going to say, wait a second, she already has the FBI investigation. Bernie's already on her heels right now. When you add in Iowa and New Hampshire wins, and I truly believe because she already has a southern firewall that she started in September. So back in September, the Clinton campaign already feared Bernie in Iowa and New Hampshire. There was an email that said, did Hillary Clinton diss the Iowa caucus? And she basically referred to the caucuses as creatures of the party's extremes. So she pretty much knows that, and she finished third in Iowa in 2008. So she pretty much knows that Bernie has a very, very good shot, regardless of what any polls say now. And he's already up in New Hampshire, and he's already up in a couple polls in Iowa. But I think that he'll beat Clinton in Iowa. He'll beat Clinton in New Hampshire. Once that happens, a tsunami of media attention. He'll win Nevada. I truly believe he'll win South Carolina based on her record on racial justice issues.
All right. Well, the fact that you truly believe that is sort of an interesting note. But in an effort to sort of stay as evidence-based here as possible, the path you describe is the path I've outlined as what would need to happen, which is Bernie Sanders comes out after Iowa and New Hampshire with somewhere between 45 and 55% of the delegates up to that point from those two states. And that on the heels of that, he gets momentum going into the the third and fourth primaries, rather. But I think that there's one element of your analysis of Hillary Clinton's lead that is sort of missing, which is I don't disagree with you that Bernie Sanders is clearly more progressive than Hillary Clinton, particularly when we look at issues around banking, Wall Street, and certainly foreign policy. And there's no doubt also, as we've covered, that the Democratic National Committee, in part by scheduling debates on weekends, on holiday weekends, conflicting with big sporting events, etc., is working to help Hillary Clinton. But I don't think that's going to be the deciding factor in the end, because there is no doubt that Hillary Clinton is, number one, a very good debater. And to the extent that people hear about Bernie Sanders' progressive ideas and those resonate, that helps Bernie. But Hillary Clinton has done a very good job of sort of convincing people by her language in these debates that she's progressive too. And the name recognition is a big factor here. So while I don't disagree with you that the path forward is momentum from the first two primaries, I think you may be overstating the impact that is going to have. I'm not saying I hope you're wrong. I'm not saying I hope you're wrong. Yeah. I just am. I don't know that it's this a guarantee that you see.
I could be. Look. I've been wrong in the past.
I'm sure.
But I could be overstating it. You're right.
Right.
I just think that what Bernie Sanders has been able to do in terms of achieving the success he's had is unprecedented when you don't have a super PAC, when you don't have media coverage, and when you don't have all the advantages that Trump and Clinton possess. I think that once he wins Iowa and New Hampshire, I think that he's well positioned to win both. Once he wins both, I think that the media coverage, the paradigm by which she's a good debater and all that stuff, it's true, she's a good debater. But when you analyze, when you look at her record from a critical thinking vantage point, which I don't think the media does, I think the media will do that after Bernie wins Iowa and New Hampshire, I think a huge impediment to the Sanders campaign is the belief among many in the media that he can't win. Once that is shattered by Iowa and New Hampshire wins, I think that's where my overall thesis lies. Once he gets Iowa and New Hampshire, and I understand I might be overly optimistic, I think that there's going to be just a tsunami, and not just in the media, online and social media throughout the country. People are already saying, "Hey, wait a second, this is amazing. Bernie Sanders is really doing well." When he proves that he can win, I think it's going to be a completely new ballgame.
All right, well, that may be. And, I don't see right now, again, evidence-based. It seems that Bernie Sanders may be able to sort of tie in Iowa. We're very, very close. I don't see any evidence that suggests he's going to run away with Iowa in any way. But again, I don't think that that's absolutely necessary for him to have a path to victory. We will start having information about this very soon, and we will check in again with A Goodman and see how his predictions are doing at that time. We've been speaking with A Goodman, author, columnist, journalist, contributor to any number of publications. Thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you, David. Thanks for everything.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
You might remember the name Katrina Pierson. She's the national spokesperson for Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Yesterday, she defended her call for a, quote, pure breed president by arguing that she is also a, quote, half-breed like President Barack Obama. This is the national spokesperson for the leading Republican presidential candidate. I'll remind you, she is also the same person who defended Donald Trump's Muslim ban idea by saying, so what, they're Muslim. She is also the same person who appeared on CNN wearing a bullet necklace. So here's the backstory. In 2012, Pierson complained that both then GOP nominee Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were not, quote, pure breeds because their fathers were not born in the United States. And she also then said on Twitter that President Obama was refusing to help the black community even though he was head Negro in charge. One of the tweets that she sent out, we'll put it up here for you to take a look at, says, perfect. Obama's dad, born in Africa. Mitt Romney's dad, born in Mexico. Any pure breeds left? So yesterday, she appeared on CNN with Brian Stelter, and Brian Stelter asked her whether she wants to retract the pure breed comment. And she said, no, she absolutely stands by it. Take a look at this.
Election. And your comment from 2012 has gotten a lot of attention this weekend. You tweeted about Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. You tweeted about how Obama's father was from Africa. You said, are there any pure breeds left? Do you regret that? Would you like to retract that?
No, not at all. Look, these tweets, I'm an activist. And I am a half-breed. I'm always getting called a half-breed. And on Twitter, when you're fighting with liberals and even establishment, you go back at them in the same silliness they're giving you. So I myself am a half-breed.
You're telling me that was just silliness?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, I'll take your word about that.
But this is the thing, Brian. This is the thing. We have entered silly season. Donald Trump is up in the polls again. There's desperate campaigns out there. They can't take.
It is silly season. Donald Trump is up in the polls. I like how she said she's constantly being called a half-breed. Where is she going and who is she hanging out with that she's constantly being called a half-breed? Like, how does that regularly come up in conversation if you're Katrina Pierson, where you're just completely used to the fact that everywhere you go, people just talk about how you're a half-breed and it's fine?
I don't know. I mean, the internet would be a pretty good place for that. and you know what? It's an interesting position she's in, being a, quote, half-breed, as the national spokesperson for Donald Trump's campaign that seems to have a base that is against anyone who might be even 1/5 of anything other than white.
Is this a sort of indirect attack, though, on Ted Cruz in some way? And that's the impetus for keeping this going, right? Half-breeds, Ted Cruz's mom from Canada, not from Canada, but Ted Cruz being born in Canada to a mother who, it sounds like at least at some point, may have had Canadian citizenship. His dad, Cuban, et cetera, et cetera. You think this is a way to keep the attack against Cruz going?
It could be, but doesn't Donald Trump have some of this going on too? I mean, wasn't one of Donald Trump's parents.
His mom from Scotland or something like that, right?
So there's something like that.
Yeah, it's just all very bizarre. The big question I come away with is, give me the list of who and where is regularly calling Katrina Pierson a half-breed in her personal life. That's really the big story for me from that thing. Okay, we have some interesting video that Dan Merica from CNN recorded. This is just 11 seconds of Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton speaking to just some kid at an event about college affordability. So let's set it up, okay? Hillary Clinton has done a really good job of sort of sounding like she has basically the same positions as Bernie Sanders on a lot of issues, including college tuition, when she really doesn't. So Bernie Sanders was very clear in recent debates and in other statements. He wants free college tuition for everybody, period, right? It's a very clear position. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, said, well, she wants everyone to be able to afford going to college, but she only wants to give the free college to people who really need it, because otherwise rich people like Donald Trump's kids might end up going to college for free when they don't need to go for free. And maybe it would be like free college in exchange for work on campus or something like that. Okay, so clearly she wants to sound just as progressive as Bernie, but her position is actually different. So Dan Merica shows up and films her saying to, just like I said, a little kid, that her opponent Bernie Sanders just wants to give away free education to everybody as if that's a really bad thing. Let's take a look at the video here.
Yeah, so, but that's my opponent's plan, is to give free education to everybody. I think we should take our money and focus it on families that really need the help.
Right. She's such a politician, and I actually admire like her political skills. I mean, she's able to just immediately look someone right in the face and create a distinction where she makes the other guy seem crazy. He just wants to throw around free education for everybody. No. We should take our money and really focus in on everybody who really needs help. Now, the thing is, almost everybody needs help to afford college at this point. College is insanely expensive. Books are insanely expensive. Most people don't have the net worth to afford college for their kids. That's just plain and simple what the math of it is, Lewis. Almost everybody needs help to afford college.
We have a student debt crisis, and I don't use the term crisis lightly. It's a huge problem right now.
And I was curious to see, well, what is Hillary Clinton's definition of what it means to need help paying for college? So I went to her website to see what she actually says about it, and she has a section called the New College Compact, and it says, we will provide grants to states that commit to ensuring that no student should borrow for tuition and improved affordability for other costs at four-year public colleges and universities. I have to admit, the way it's written on her website sounds like everybody is going to come out of college with absolutely no debt. And I guess maybe part of it is by working, Lewis, or I don't know. I mean, there's no definition on Hillary's campaign website as to who qualifies for help and who doesn't. She just says nobody will come out of college with debt.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Her arguments against Bernie's plan are just invalid. They're borderline stupid. And her plan is intentionally ambiguous. So I really hate everything Hillary does.
There's two, Lewis having a lot of animosity towards Hillary Clinton. There's sort of two, but you'd still vote for her over any Republican.
Yeah, I would.
There's sort of two possibilities in my reading of it, of what Hillary has said and what is written on Hillary's website. Either A, she doesn't really want free college for everybody, and people are going to come out of college with debt, right? Or option B, she basically has the same position as Bernie Sanders, but for some reason is saying that it's slightly different. I don't really know what the truth is, but if you can go on and look at this new college compact, new college affordability compact that Hillary Clinton has, I don't see specifics about who it is that would have to pay. If there's a guarantee no one incurs debt in college, explain the mechanism through which people might, could it be that it's based on what Hillary's math determines people should be able to afford? So they say, okay, based on what you make, you should be able to come out of college without debt, but maybe the financial situation doesn't really permit that. I don't really know what the answer is. I mean, I'm honestly asking. I want to know.
Ask away. Don't hold your breath on getting the specifics of that from the Hillary campaign, Dave. I don't think it's going to happen.
We have a voicemail today that's really funny. I've mentioned before Troy York, our curmudgeon caller, And he called, it sounds like it's him, and the caller ID also suggests that it's him. He called in claiming to be Lewis, a transgender woman. And this is all some kind of big protest about my position last week that we should have gender neutral bathrooms. So this is Lewis, the transgender woman, which I have to tell you, Lewis, is pretty transparently Troy York. We'll play the voicemail. Take a listen.
Hi, David Packman. This is Lewis again. I got cut off. But I just wanted to say, like, I really enjoy your program and the message that you're getting across. I hope you get to your audience that transgender people, which I am.
Right.
I like to dress up as a woman, and that regardless if these gender bathrooms are not done, we're going to sneak into the women's bathroom anyway. I like to go in often in these bathrooms. I wear my pink panties, and I sit next to the stall and wait for
pause it there.
to come
Pause
in.
it.
Yeah. Or we could even stop it. A hint to Troy York. Anybody who's really a transgender woman wouldn't describe their transgenderism as, I like to dress in women's clothing. I think that was the first red flag, other than the fact that he's barely disguising his voice, that this is actually Troy York.
Yes. Maybe he wasn't trying very hard. Maybe the point is that he didn't like our coverage of that, that story.
I think that's safe to say, Lewis. On today's bonus show, Jimmy Kimmel asks people about Martin Luther King endorsing Donald Trump. It's hilarious. We will talk about two really, really under the influence drug smugglers turning themselves in. I also have a very, very interesting story that I'm actually legally bound not to talk about, but I'm going to talk about it on today's bonus show. Go to davidpakman.com/membership. Sign up today and make sure to get on our mailing list if you want to be notified about our membership special next Tuesday. In honor of my 32nd birthday, we will have a 32nd birthday related membership special. Speak to you on the bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.